Here's something almost every new rider gets backwards. You buy the bike, you pass the test at the DMV, and you figure the scary part is behind you, that from here you just rack up miles on the motorcycle and quietly get safer. The insurance companies have the actual numbers, and they say the opposite. Your first 30 days on a motorcycle are about 4 times more likely to end in a crash than your entire second year of riding. That's the whole second year measured against your first single month. And it doesn't ease off gently. One study by the Highway Loss Data Institute went through nearly 57,000 collision claims, and almost a quarter of them, 22%, landed in the first 30 days after the insurance policy started. The crash rate falls by about 1/3 in the second month, and it doesn't drop by 2/3 until you've been riding for roughly 6 months. So the danger isn't spread evenly across your first year the way you'd assume. It's stacked hard into the very beginning, and you either get through that window or you don't. Now here's the part that should bother you. The two things most new riders lean on to stay safe, the weekend safety course and the old advice to just start slow on a big, heavy cruiser, the data has something pretty uncomfortable to say about both. And once you see why that first month on a motorcycle is so brutal, you'll be able to tell the difference between what actually keeps riders alive and what only feels like it does. Grab a coffee. This one might change how you ride. Picture one specific morning, because an average can't show you what this actually feels like. You're on your motorcycle, stopped halfway up a hill at a red light, first month riding, a line of cars behind you. The light turns green. And in about 2 seconds, you have to do 6 separate things at once. Balance the bike on one foot, hold the front brake so you don't roll backward into the car behind you, find the clutch's friction point, feed in just enough throttle, ease off that clutch, and clock the pickup truck now turning left across your path. That example comes straight from Matthew Moore, a vice president at that same institute, and it's the whole story in one red light. A rider with a few years under them does all of that without a single conscious thought. You, on day 20, are running it like a checklist, and the checklist is slow. Moore's point is simple. Operating a motorcycle is a seriously complex physical task, and in the first weeks, almost none of it is automatic yet. That's why the crash claims pile up in that first month and then fall off a cliff. You're simply getting better fast. Every ride, a few more of those 6 actions drop below your conscious attention until one day you pull away from that same hill and realize you weren't thinking about any of it. That's the curve those 57,000 insurance claims are actually describing. Thousands of riders climbing the exact same learning wall, and the ones who crash usually hit it in the first few weeks before the wall got any lower. But inexperience is a fuzzy word, so let's get specific about what's actually missing. In 1981, Harry Hurt published what's still the most detailed motorcycle crash study ever done in America. His team investigated 900 crashes on the streets of Los Angeles, on scene, plus another 3,600 police reports. People in the motorcycle world just call it the Hurt Report, and 40 years later, nobody's topped it. One of the findings should completely reframe how you think about that first month. More than half of the riders in those crashes had less than 5 months of experience on the specific motorcycle they crashed, even though their total time on the street averaged almost 3 years. Read that again. These weren't all fresh beginners. A lot of them had ridden for years and had just swapped to a different bike, and the clock reset. The danger doesn't track how long you've been riding. It tracks how long you've been riding that machine. And here's what those underexperienced riders couldn't do when it counted. Hurt's team found that in a typical crash, the rider had just under 2 seconds to react and avoid it. 2 seconds. And most of these weren't high-speed highway wrecks. The median impact speed in that data was only about 21 miles an hour, ordinary street speed. That's how little time a new rider gets, even at everyday speeds. And the 2 skills that save you in those 2 seconds, hard emergency braking and a quick swerve, were, in Hurt's words, essentially absent. New riders would stomp the rear brake and skid it, barely touch the front brake where most of your stopping power actually lives, and the ability to countersteer around an obstacle simply wasn't there yet. There's one more detail from that report that quietly points at the fix. Riders who'd grown up on dirt bikes were significantly underrepresented in the crashes. All those hours sliding around on a dirt bike had already taught their hands and eyes what a motorcycle does at the limit, long before they ever pulled into traffic. And that lines up with the single most damning number in the whole study. 92% of the crash-involved riders were essentially self-taught, picking it up from a friend, a relative, or nobody at all. So the obvious answer is training, right? Take the safety course, learn the skills in an empty parking lot instead of in live traffic. And mostly, yes. But this is where the data gets uncomfortable. That same institute looked at 4 states that require a safety course for riders under 21, California, Florida, Idaho, and Oregon, and compared them to 28 states with no such requirement. The riders who were forced to take the course had a crash claim rate about 10% higher, not lower. Now, the Institute was careful here, and so am I. That difference wasn't statistically significant, so it is not proof the course makes you crash. But it absolutely punctures the assumption that a weekend class makes you safe. And the likely reason fits everything we've already covered. In a lot of places, passing the course hands you a full motorcycle license immediately. Skip the course, and you ride for months on a learner's permit first, supervised and restricted, easing in slowly. The course can actually shorten the slow, protected period where you'd otherwise build those reflexes the boring way. Notice this doesn't contradict hurt at all. The same report found that trained riders crashed less and got hurt less. Both things are true at once. The course teaches you real, life-saving skills. Emergency braking, swerving, the exact stuff that's otherwise missing in a brand new rider. What the course cannot do is compress 5 months of seat time into a single weekend. You get the skills from the class in 2 days. You only get the reflexes from months of actual riding. If any of this is making you rethink your first season, do me a favor and hit subscribe. I break down motorcycle safety and riding skills like this every week, and there's a full one on emergency braking coming next. Okay, back to it, because we still haven't talked about the bike itself. The machine you choose bends this entire curve, and one type bends it the wrong way. Go back to those insurance claims for a second. On supersport bikes, the fully faired race replica machines like a Yamaha R6 or a Kawasaki Ninja, more than half of all collision claims came in the first 3 months of the policy. Half. The riskiest window on the riskiest bikes lined up almost perfectly, and on supersports, the crashes turn fatal far more often. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety puts the driver death rate on supersport bikes at about 4 times higher than on cruisers or standard motorcycles, roughly 22.5 deaths for every 10,000 registered bikes versus about 5.7. Supersports are a small slice of the motorcycles on the road, well under 10% of registrations, but they make up more than 1 in 5 of all the riders who die, the single biggest share of any type of bike. And you can't blame helmets. Fatally injured supersport riders actually have the highest helmet-wearing rate of any group on the road. What's killing them is speed and power, handed to a brand new rider all at once. Look at the raw physics on a sport bike. A supersport can make around 111 horsepower while weighing only about 404 pounds. A big touring Harley-Davidson makes maybe 65 horsepower and weighs close to 788 pounds. The lightweight rocket has nearly double the power and half the weight, and it'll happily hit triple digits before a beginner's brain has caught up to 40 miles an hour. These are racing bikes with mirrors and a plate bolted on. Even the 600 cubic centimeter versions will top 160 miles an hour straight off the showroom floor, and the leader class ones are electronically capped right around 186. But here's the trap nobody warns you about. The answer isn't automatically that giant cruiser either. A 700-pound cruiser you can barely hold up at a stoplight with a big handful of low-end torque is its own beginner nightmare. The bike that gets you through the first 90 days is honestly boring on paper, light enough to pick up off the ground by yourself, and slow enough to forgive the mistakes you are absolutely going to make. There's one more twist, and it complicates the tidy story I've been telling you. Because the single deadliest group of riders in America today isn't fresh 19-year-olds. Look at who actually dies on a motorcycle. Back in 1975, riders under 30 were 80% of all motorcycle deaths. By 2019, they were down to 28%. Over that same stretch, riders 50 and older went from just 3% of the deaths to 37%, the biggest slice of the pie. And the explanation safety researchers keep coming back to is the returning rider. A guy rides a little 350 in his 20s, quits for 30 years to raise a family, and at 55 buys the modern leader bike he always wanted, a machine with more horsepower than a 1970s superbike and brakes and acceleration he has never felt. On paper, he has decades of experience behind him, but his reflexes are tuned to a motorcycle that no longer exists, and he's dropped right back into that dangerous first month's window without knowing it. The clock reset on him, exactly like Hurt found. He just can't feel that it did. And then there's the group that ties all of this together, the unlicensed. In 2024, 35% of the riders in fatal motorcycle crashes were operating with no valid motorcycle license at all, more than a third. Riders who never got the permit, never took the class, never built the base, starting that lethal first window with absolutely nothing under them. So here's what actually gets a rider through the first 90 days, and none of it is luck. First, respect the calendar as much as the odometer. The data draws a clear line right around 6 months. That's when the crash rate finally drops by 2/3. Treat your first 6 months, and especially your first month, as a season you have to get through in one piece. Slow and boring is exactly what you want here. Every extra hour of low-stakes riding, an empty parking lot, a quiet back road, an early Sunday morning before traffic wakes up, is you quietly moving those 6 actions below your conscious attention. Second, drill the 2 skills that were weakest in that crash data on purpose. Go to an empty lot and practice hard front brake stops until grabbing that brake lever no longer scares you. Practice swerving around a cone. These are the exact skills you'll have under 2 seconds to produce for real one day, so build them before the day comes. Third, understand that most multi-vehicle motorcycle crashes start with the other driver. That same study found the #1 cause was simply that the driver never saw the bike, and intersections are where it happens most. So ride your first months like you're invisible, because to a distracted driver turning left at an intersection, you basically are. Fourth, and this one is blunt, ride sober, every single time. In 2024, 26% of the riders killed on motorcycles were over the legal alcohol limit, and in single vehicle crashes it was 39%. Alcohol wipes out the exact reflexes you spent all those months building, in the exact window where you have the fewest to spare. And last, know which season is trying to kill you, literally. 57% of all motorcycle deaths happen between May and September, and they peak in August. Every new rider's first summer is also the most crowded, hottest, most dangerous stretch on the calendar. So don't let that scare you off your first summer. Just spend those months building your reflexes on quiet roads and early mornings before you take on peak traffic. When you line all of it up, the story these numbers tell is weirdly hopeful. That first month being 4 times more dangerous than your second year is temporary. It's a window with a beginning and an end, and it closes on its own as you ride. The riders who make it through aren't braver or luckier than the ones who don't. They just treated those first 90 days like the genuinely dangerous thing they are. They picked a motorcycle that forgives, they built the reflexes before they needed them, and they rode that first season like every car on the road was out to get them. Do that, and the curve does the rest. It drops out from under you until 6 months in you pull away from that same hill without thinking, and you finally feel why the numbers let up. And if you want to see exactly how to practice emergency braking so it's actually there the day you need it, that one is up next.